There is a valley in the far north of Scotland called Strathnaver. Walk it today and you find sheep, a single-track road, and low green mounds where houses used to stand. In the summer of 1819, the families living there were given notice, and when some did not leave fast enough, the roofs were set on fire while the old and the sick were still being carried out. The people of Strathnaver did not vanish. They were loaded onto ships. And here is the strange thing modern genetics has uncovered, the thing this whole story turns on. The men who carried that valley in their blood, the Mackays and Gunns and Sutherlands, did not scatter. They landed together, married each other's daughters, and 200 years later, their Y-DNA still clusters so tightly that a geneticist can look at a man in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, and point back at one Scottish strath. This is a video about 19 Highland surnames: Sutherland, Mackay, MacLeod, MacDonald, Gunn, Ross, Munro, Matheson, MacRae, Sinclair, Chisholm, Cameron, MacInnes, MacNeil, Morrison, MacAskill, MacDonell of Glengarry, Stewart, and Fraser. It is about the Highland clearances, about the Cape Fear Valley in North Carolina and Glengarry County in Ontario, about why haplogroups and mitochondrial DNA and autosomal markers, about the historian T.M. Devine and what he says really happened. And it builds to something most channels never tell you. In a handful of cases, the truest surviving Highland bloodline no longer lives in the Highlands at all. It crossed an ocean, and it has been waiting there in the DNA of ordinary North American families ever since. Before we go on, if you would like to discover everything about your own surname, this one is for you. Not just where your name truly comes from and the DNA story behind it, but some of the most famous people who ever carried it. And a few darker secrets we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Scan the QR code on your screen right now with your phone, or just tap the link in the description below, and there you can get your own personalized 30-page Surname Heritage Report, delivered straight to your inbox. Now, let us get back to the story. For most of recorded history, the Scottish Highlands ran on a clan system that was as much a family structure as an economy. The chief held the land in theory, but the people on it were his kin, his tenants, and his responsibility. They farmed oats and barley, grazed black cattle, and spoke Gaelic. Then, over the second half of the 1700s, the arithmetic changed. A Cheviot sheep could be run across a whole hillside with 2 shepherds and a dog, and earned more in a season than a glen full of tenants earned in a year. From roughly the 1750s to the 1850s, Highland landlords, often the very clan chiefs, whose ancestors those families had followed into battle, began removing people to make room for sheep. Later, during the Highland Potato Famine of 1846 to 1856, they were offered what the estates called assisted emigration, a ticket out, sometimes a ticket they could not refuse. Where did they go? Nova Scotia above all. The Gaelic-speaking counties of Pictou, Antigonish, and Cape Breton took in something like 25,000 Gaelic speakers between 1775 and 1850, so many that Gaelic became the 3rd most spoken language in Canada. Glengarry County in Ontario was founded by them. The Cape Fear region of North Carolina drew a great wave. and later the ships turned toward Australia and New Zealand. That is the settled story, and true as far as it goes. But underneath it runs a genetic record no landlord intended to leave, and it is far more precise than the ledgers ever were. In 2015, a team out of Oxford, led by Peter Donnelly and Sir Walter Bodmer, published a study in the journal Nature called The People of the British Isles. They took DNA from people whose 4 grandparents were all born close together in the same rural area and let a computer sort them with no map and no labels. The clusters fell almost exactly onto the geography, and the Scottish Highlands and Islands formed their own distinct genetic country, shaped by centuries of marrying close to home. Now hold that next to a second finding. 4 years earlier, the Edinburgh geneticist James Wilson, working with the writer Alistair Moffat on a project called The Scots, a genetic journey, mapped the Y chromosome lineages of Scotland. The backbone of Gaelic male ancestry turned out to be a branch of haplogroup R1b known by the marker L21, the same deep lineage that dominates Ireland and the Atlantic West. Put those 2 findings together with the history, and you get the spine of this story. British populations cluster by valley because people married locally for 1,000 years. And when a glen was cleared, it did not dissolve into the general population. It moved as a block. The people of one strath sailed on the same ships, took up land side by side in the same Nova Scotia township, and kept marrying each other for 5 generations in the new country, exactly as they had in the old one. That is why a Y-DNA surname project can now take a MacLeod in Cape Breton or a Mackay in North Carolina, and, in the best cases, trace him not just to a clan, but to a particular Scottish valley. The clearance meant to erase these communities accidentally preserved them. We begin in the county that gave a clan its name and hosted the most infamous clearance of them all. The Sutherland estate was the largest private landholding in Europe, belonging to the Countess of Sutherland and the Marquess of Stafford. Between 1809 and 1821, their factor, Patrick Seller, ran the Sutherland clearances. Around 15,000 people were driven off the inland straths, Strathnaver among them, and pushed to the bleak coast for sheep. In 1816, Seller was tried over the death of an old woman during an eviction. He was acquitted, which told the tenants everything they needed to know about whose side the law was on. The Sutherlands who left sailed for Nova Scotia and the Red River country of what is now Manitoba. Because they emigrated in tight family groups, the surname Sutherland in Pictou County still points back to those same emptied straths. Next door, in the northwest corner of Sutherland, lay the Mackay country, the land the Gaels called Duthaik Mhikaweed. This was Strathnaver itself, and it sat at the center of the worst of the burnings. When Seller's men cleared the strath, they were clearing Mackays by the 100. Many sailed for Nova Scotia, and another stream joined Lord Selkirk's Red River colony on the Canadian prairie. The Mackay Y-DNA story is one of the cleaner ones, precisely because the clan came out of such a compact area. When a North American Mackay finds his closest matches are Mackays in Cape Breton and Manitoba, rather than anyone still living in Scotland, he is reading the Strathnaver clearance in his own chromosomes. Move now to the islands, to Skye and Harris and Lewis. The MacLeods of Dunvegan had held Skye for centuries, but holding land and affording it are different things. During the famine years of the 1840s, the chief, Norman MacLeod, spent himself close to bankruptcy, feeding his own starving tenants. And when the estate could no longer carry them, the people were cleared and shipped out, to Cape Breton in great numbers, and later to Australia. The MacLeods carry a strong strain of Norse ancestry from the Viking centuries in the Hebrides, and their Y DNA often reflects it. A North American MacLeod, whose results show that Northern signature is looking at the deep history of Skye and Lewis, where Gael and Norse merged long before anyone thought to write it down. No name looms larger in the Highlands than MacDonald, and none has a stranger genetic footnote. The MacDonalds descend from the Lords of the Isles, the Sea Kings, who once ruled the western seaboard almost independently of Scotland. Their people spread across Skye, the Uists, and Glengarry, and when the clearances and rising rents came, they went to the Cape Fear Valley of North Carolina, to Prince Edward Island, and to Glengarry County in Ontario. Flora MacDonald herself, who helped Bonnie Prince Charlie escape after Culloden, emigrated to North Carolina in 1774. Now, the footnote. When the Clan Donald DNA Project and the geneticist Brian Sykes examined the Y chromosomes of MacDonalds, MacDougalls, and McAllisters, they found something the history books had only guessed at. A great many share an unusual lineage that does not belong to the common Highland R1b at all. It is a rare branch of R1a, tracing to a single 12th century warlord, Somerled, founder of the dynasty, who died in 1164. Sykes estimated he has hundreds of thousands of living male descendants. If your surname is MacDonald and you carry that rare R1a signature, you are not guessing at your descent from the Lords of the Isles. You are carrying the proof. Hold on to what just happened, because it sets the rule for everything that follows. The surname told you almost nothing. The chromosome told you a name, a century, and a dynasty. Watch how often that gap opens over the next several clans. Back to the northeast mainland, to Caithness and eastern Sutherland, and a clan with no chief to protect it. The Gunns are an Old Norse Gaelic clan, and by the clearances they had gone centuries without a recognized chief, which in the brutal logic of the era made them easier to move. Cleared from Caithness and Sutherland, they scattered across Canada on the same tide as their Sutherland and Mackay neighbors, and Gunn descendants often find their autosomal DNA knitted tightly to other families from that same corner of Scotland. South now, into the farmland of Easter Ross, where the first real resistance flared. In 1792, before the great clearances had fully begun, the tenants of Ross-shire tried to stop the sheep at the source, gathering to drive the incoming flocks out of the county altogether. Gaelic tradition remembers that year as Bliathna nan Cowrach, the year of the sheep, and the episode is known as the Ross-shire Sheep Riot. It failed. The authorities broke it up and the sheep came anyway. The Rosses, later cleared from Easter Ross, went largely to Nova Scotia, carrying the lineages of the Cromarty and Tain districts, and the Ross Y DNA in Pictou County still traces back toward that early, defiant, defeated stand. Beside them sat the Munros of Fowlis. For in Donald, the land of Donald, was their heartland on the north shore of the Cromarty Firth, and the Munros were cleared alongside their Ross neighbors into the same maritime and upper Canadian communities. Because both families came from the same small district and often sailed together, their descendants can share overlapping autosomal segments across the two surnames. The DNA does not care about the name on the ship's manifest. It records who actually married whom. The Mathesons carry the sharpest irony in this whole story. Their homeland lay in La Chalche and reached into Sutherland, ordinary tenants like the rest. But in 1844, a Matheson of a very different kind bought the Isle of Lewis. Sir James Matheson had made a fortune in the opium trade of Jardine Matheson, and with it he purchased Lewis and set about improving it. Improvement, in the language of the age, meant clearing people. So a man named Matheson cleared tenants, some of them Mathesons, from the very islands his name was tied to. Those families went to Quebec and to Canada's growing Highland settlements, and the irony is baked into the record. The clan name sits on both sides of the eviction notice, and the Mathesons are not the exception. The further west we go now, the more often you find the evicted and the evictors sharing a surname, and the harder it becomes to tell this as Scotland against England. To Kintail, on the western seaboard, to the men remembered as the shirt of mail. The MacRaes were followers of the Mackenzies. So formidable in a fight, they were called Mackenzie's coat of mail. Their country was Kintail, in the mountains above Loch Duich, in the shadow of Donan Castle. When Kintail was cleared, they went to Canada and the United States. Their Y-DNA carries the Western Highland RL21 signature of Wester Ross. And because Kintail was a compact glen, MacRae results often resolve cleanly toward that single mountain valley. Back to Caithness, the low green county that looks more to the sea than the mountains. The Sinclairs, Earls of Caithness, were a Norman-descended family who had become thoroughly Norse-Scottish in that flat, wind-scoured county. Cleared from Caithness, they took two roads. Many went to Nova Scotia. Others sailed to New Zealand, part of the later emigration that carried Highlanders to the far side of the planet. If you want to see how early and how total a clearance could be, look at Strathglass and the Chisholms. Strathglass, inland from Booley, was Chisholm country, and it holds a grim distinction. Between 1801 and 1809, in one of the earliest mass clearances of all, the Chisholm estate emptied the strath of thousands of its people, sending them to Nova Scotia and Upper Canada, while much of the rest of the Highlands had barely begun to feel the change. That is exactly the pattern the genetics loves. A single valley, cleared in one short burst, resettled together in Canada. Chisholm descendants in Nova Scotia and Ontario form one of the tighter transplanted clusters you will find, a strath lifted whole and set down 3,000 miles west. Strathglass is the cleanest example of the transplant. The next three clans are where it went furthest, where so much of the home population left that the question stops being where the emigrants came from and starts being who is left behind. South into Lochaber, the rugged country around Ben Nevis, home of the Camerons of Lochiel. The Camerons were among the most famous fighting clans in Scotland, out for the Jacobites again and again. When Lochaber was cleared, they went to Glengarry County in Ontario and later Australia, joining a settlement already thick with Highlanders, a piece of the Western Highlands rebuilt in the Canadian forest. Cameron Y-DNA runs on the Western RL21 lineages of Lochaber, and the surname projects are strong enough that a North American Cameron has a real chance of matching back to that corner of the Great Glen. To Morvern and Mull now, to a name that shows the sheep at their most ruthless. The MacInneses were an ancient clan of Morvern, the peninsula across the water from Mull, and both were among the most mercilessly cleared lands in Scotland. Estate after estate was emptied for sheep, and those driven out went to Nova Scotia and Australia. Because Morvern was so completely stripped, this is almost a pure case of the transplant effect. The living community of Morvern MacInneses is arguably now more intact in Cape Breton and Australia than in Morvern itself, where the glens were left to the flocks. Out to the edge of the Hebrides, to the Isle of Barra, and one of the cruelest chapters of all. The MacNeils had held Barra from their sea fortress of Chisholm Castle for centuries. But in 1838, the chief, General Roderick MacNeil, went bankrupt, and Barra was sold to a lowland landlord, Colonel Gordon of Cluny. Between 1848 and 1851, in the depths of the famine, Gordon cleared Barra and the neighboring islands with a brutality that shocked contemporaries, herding families onto emigrant ships. They were carried to Cape Breton, where the name remains common to this day. Here the DNA and the geography line up almost perfectly. Barra is a small island, and its people went overwhelmingly to one part of Cape Breton. So a MacNeil in Nova Scotia who tests today is very often looking at that single island written directly into his results, one of the clearest homeland matches in the entire Highland diaspora. Barra is the cleanest match in this whole story. So if you got a small jolt just then, do one thing for the channel. Subscribe to Anglo Origins. Every week we take one surname, one lineage, or one ancient genome, and walk it back to the ground it came from. Sources named, science laid out plain. While the Barra families were being loaded onto Gordon's ships, the same thing was happening 200 miles north, to a family that once held the law of an island in its hands. The Morrisons of Lewis were traditionally the Breves, the hereditary judges who spoke the law in Gaelic before there were courts. When Lewis and Harris were cleared, they settled in the eastern townships southeast of Montreal, which drew many Hebridean families. The townships preserved not only the bloodline, but the Gaelic tongue for generations, a piece of Lewis transplanted onto the banks of the St. Lawrence. Now, one man, one ship, and one date, because it shows the whole process in miniature. The MacAskills were a Skye family from around Loch Bracadale, traditionally the coast watchers of the MacLeods, the men who watched for raiders from the sea. In 1811, a MacAskill named Kenneth gathered his family and a body of followers, boarded a ship, and sailed for North Carolina. He led a group, and that is the emigration pattern that makes the genetics work, captured in one voyage. A leader, his kin, and his followers, crossing together and settling together, carrying a slice of western Skye to the American South. 2 names left. Then the finding that turns this video around, the one that decides whether Cape Breton and Cape Fear are the copy or the original. Some of the earliest Highlanders to leave, and some of the very last to be cleared, share one name and one county on 2 continents. The MacDonalds of Glengarry came from Knoydart in the Western Highlands, and they founded Glengarry County in Ontario, naming their new home after the glen they had lost. That settlement began around 1800 and became the anchor of Highland Catholic Canada. But Glengarry also holds one of the last and most notorious clearances of all. In 1853, long after most people imagined the clearances had ended, the tenants of Knoydart were evicted and their homes pulled down, in scenes that outraged even a public grown used to such things. In Glengarry County, the MacDonell Y DNA of Knoydart survives as one of the oldest continuous Highland genetic communities in North America. A royal name now, worn by kings and crofters alike. The Stewarts who concern us here were the Highland Stewarts of Appin and the fringes of Athol, not the royal house directly, but the same broad stock. Appin sits on the west coast near Glencoe and carries its own dark history, including the Appin murder of 1752 that Robert Louis Stevenson later built into fiction. Cleared, they went to Canada and the Antipodes. For the tester, they are a warning as much as a lineage. Stewart is one of the most common surnames in Scotland, carried by many unrelated families, so a Stewart cannot lean on the name alone. He needs the Y DNA to tell him which Stewart line, from which glen, he descends from. And finally, to the Aird and the country around Booley and the Frasers of Lovat. The Fraser homeland lay in the Aird, the fertile district west of Inverness, and tenants cleared from that country went to Nova Scotia and Ontario. There is a fine thread out of this glen. The explorer Simon Fraser, who charted the great river in British Columbia that bears his name, came from a Fraser family rooted in exactly this country. The name traveled from a quiet Highland district to a river carved across a continent. Fraser Y DNA carries the Eastern Highland ERL21 lineages of the Inverness country, and the surname projects are large enough to trace a North American Fraser back toward the lands of Lovat. That is 19 names and 19 glens. But before we get to what the DNA finally proves, there is a debt to pay. We have been telling the emotional version of the clearances, the burning roofs, the weeping families, the cruel landlords. That version is not false. It is not the whole truth either. The leading modern historian of the clearances, Sir Tom Devine of the University of Edinburgh, reframes the whole episode. He argues they were, at bottom, an early modern economic transformation, the same shift from peasant society to commercial farming that hit rural Europe from Ireland to the continent. And he insists on a point many patriotic accounts skate past. This was very often not the English against the Scots. The men signing the eviction orders were, again and again, Gaelic clan chiefs clearing their own kinsmen. It was, in Devine's framing, a betrayal from within. The vocabulary is contested too. The word genocide gets used for the clearances, and most serious historians reject it, because for all its cruelty, the aim was profit and removal, not extermination. Some eviction figures circulating online are inflated or unverifiable. The honest position is that the clearances were a real, large-scale, often brutal catastrophe, and also that they have been mythologized, and both are true at once. There is one more correction the careful viewer will already be reaching for. That great migration to the Cape Fear Valley of North Carolina, the one Flora MacDonald joined, largely predates the worst of the clearances. Its peak was the 1760s and 1770s, driven less by forced eviction than by rack-renting landlords squeezing tenants who then chose to leave while they still could. The North Carolina Highlanders were, in the main, economic emigrants a generation ahead of the sheep. not refugees fleeing the burnings. The blood that crossed to Carolina and the blood that crossed to Cape Breton left for related but genuinely different reasons. Hold on to that because it feeds straight into the strangest finding of all. We have assumed all the way through that the Highlands are the homeland and the diaspora is the copy. But look closely at what happened to the land after the people left, and that assumption starts to come apart. When a glen was cleared, the people did not come back. The strath went to sheep, then to deer forests for wealthy sportsmen, then to a trickle of lowland shepherds and incomers with no connection to the old families at all. Over 200 years, the population of many Highland valleys was replaced almost as thoroughly as it was reduced. The thread running through that glen, unbroken for 1,000 years, was cut at home. But it was not cut overseas. The people of that glen sailed together, settled together, and married within their own transplanted community for 5 and 6 generations, in Gaelic-speaking pockets of Nova Scotia and Ontario. So isolated, the old ways survived long after they faded in Scotland. And so a remarkable inversion took place. The tightest surviving signature of a particular Highland strath is in several cases no longer in the Highlands. It is in Cape Breton. It is in the Cape Fear Valley. It is in Glengarry County, Ontario. The clearance was meant to erase these people from the land. Instead, it lifted each community out whole at the exact moment of departure and sealed it in a genetic time capsule across the Atlantic, while the homeland itself slowly forgot. When a MacNeil in Cape Breton or a Chisholm in Ontario tests their DNA and finds a match tighter to a lost Scottish valley than most people living in Scotland could produce, they are not the faded copy. In that narrow, precise genetic sense, they may be the better preserved original. That is the discovery this whole video was walking toward. The homeland moved, and it has been living in North America quietly, in the blood of ordinary families, for 200 years. Before you read your own results as a map straight back to one glen, the science demands a hard piece of honesty, and this channel will always give it to you. A surname is not a bloodline. The Highland clans were never simply single families. They were political and military alliances, absorbing people constantly. Smaller families, called CPTs, took the ruling chief's name for protection because a MacDonald tenant was harder to rob than a nameless one. Servants and neighbors adopted the name of the ground they lived on. So when a Y-DNA project examines a name like MacDonald or Fraser or Stewart, it does not find one founding father. It finds several unrelated lineages sharing a surname. The name cut into a churchyard headstone in Pictou, and the marker on the Y chromosome do not always agree. 2 more limits. Y-DNA follows only the direct male line, your father's father's father, one thread out of thousands of ancestors you actually have. And your mitochondrial DNA, the maternal line, tells a separate and much deeper story no surname will ever capture, because women's names were rewritten every generation by marriage. The strath-level clustering we have described is real and strongest for these transplanted communities, but it is a probability and a pattern, not a certificate you can frame. It does not tell you that you personally descend, cleanly and solely, from the men who walked out of that glen in 1819. Read your results with that humility, and they become something better than a fantasy. They become evidence. So here is what the DNA finally says, underneath 2 centuries of ships and sheep and silence. 19 Highland names, Sutherland and Mackay, out of the burning straths of the north, MacLeod and MacDonald and MacNeil and Morrison off the islands, Chisholm and Fraser and Ross and Munro from the eastern glens. Everyone driven out and everyone carried across an ocean, not as scattered individuals, but as whole communities, so tightly bound that their valleys survived in their blood long after the valleys themselves fell quiet. The men who cleared the glens thought they were closing a book. Without knowing it, they were making a copy and hiding it across the sea. And now, with a cheek swab and a database, the descendants of the cleared can do the one thing the clearance was designed to prevent. They can find their way home. If your name was in this video, the valley behind it is still there. Grass-grown, sheep-cropped, quiet. But the bloodline that once filled it may be looking back at you out of your own results. Tell me your Highland surname in the comments and where your family landed. Nova Scotia, the Carolinas, Glengarry, Australia. Let us see how many lost glens are watching right now. And if you want the next name traced back to the ground it came from, subscribe to Anglo Origins. The homeland is still out there. We are going to keep finding it.